Welcome to Artisan Cakes, where we provide the tools and the knowledge to emphasize your passion for baking. Today I thought you guys might want to see a little what we do for cake structure when we are in the process of building a very large design. Sometimes that calls for additional cake tiers in Styrofoam. And one of the most common questions we get here at the shop is, do I need to put supports in my Styrofoam? Well, the answer is yes, you most definitely do. The reason you need Styrofoam support is because it still has a little bit of squish to it. The Styrofoam will compress, and I'm assuming if you're going to do a 20 or a 22 inch Styrofoam, then you have a ton of layers up above that. If you have a ton of layers of cake, this will compress. So, just to go back to what we're doing today, we are talking about Styrofoam tiers in large wedding or stacked cakes. And our question of the day is, do I have to use support in the Styrofoam? The answer is yes. Styrofoam does compress. If you're using large Styrofoam rounds, this happens to be a 20 inch. If you happen to be doing tiers above this, then you probably have an 18 inch, a 16, a 14, a 12, an 8, maybe a 10, and a couple of 6s. I don't know, some of those might be double barrels. We are talking about a lot of weight on the Styrofoam. And while our Styrofoam quality is quite nice and rigid, that does not mean that it won't compress. It will compress. So, let's talk about how I create my supports. So the first thing you're going to notice is this PVC pipe coming up the middle. Yes, I do use PVC in my large wedding cakes. This is a guide portion. We will actually have a PVC piece that will reach primarily 2/3 of the way up the cake. So even though this one stops here, we go much taller. And then we use heavy duty MDF boards or masonite boards on the bottom. Get that out of your way so you can see. And to that, we have something called a floor flange. This can be found in your hardware store. I like the galvanized. They're a little more food safe. I would still do a coating of PME spray or a quick lacquer, possibly coat it in chocolate, something so this doesn't actually touch your cake if you're putting cake directly on it. In this case, we are going Styrofoam on this layer. So the first thing I have is a corrugated round with the center cut out for the floor flange. And what this does is eliminate this little gap, this space. If I were to put the Styrofoam directly down, there'd be a little bit of wiggle because the Styrofoam wouldn't be able to get past this floor flange. So to fix that, I put one piece of corrugated that's roughly the height of the floor flange. I have 4 flat screws holding that in place. This happens to be a adapter for a 1/2 inch PVC, and you'll see it's designed to screw directly into that floor flange. So it goes in nice and tight. PVC just slides into that. And now I've got a nice sturdy straight pole that's going to keep my cake upright. It's especially useful if I'm doing chandelier or hanging cake tables. Everybody gets a little nervous when I start hanging things off the ceiling. I have a 1 inch hole cut out to allow room for the PVC pole. That gives me plenty of wiggle room all the way around so that I get it lined up exactly the way I like it. I've also taken time to use a Styrofoam cutter or Styrofoam melter, and we use the single plate or SPS plate systems. And I've taken just a moment to measure this space, and I used my Styrofoam melting tool to cut that out slightly. Then I used hardwood dowels. Notice I said hardwood, not bamboo, not softwood. That is a hardwood dowel. And it goes directly down into the Styrofoam all the way through the bottom. When you put those dowels in, You have to take just a minute to clean out the little chunkies. There's these, can you see that? You want to clean that out so that the dowel goes all the way through the styrofoam without creating lumps through the other side. All right, so now I have this compressed, a hardwood dowel in place. I've taken time to cut out a 1-inch diameter circle in the very center of my single plate system. That goes right over the PVC. And then I take a moment to line those little cutouts. And now I have a hardwood dowel supporting all 4 corners, just as if it were actual cake. I have a column supporting all 4 corners of the SPS plate. It's in there nice and tight and flush. That just leaves a little bit of space to have to ice with buttercream or cover in fondant, whatever your preference might be. And then as we work our way up this cake, we use a 2-plate method. So this is going to be for a 10-inch cake. This is a 10-inch grease-proof corrugated board. We've taken time to cut the center hole out, again, to allow for that PVC pole. And then I've glued it to a board that's slightly larger. The way this works is we place our cake onto this nice, pretty board, cut it, fill it, ice it. When we are ready to stack the cake on site, we actually use a spatula and we wedge it between these 2 pieces, pop it loose, and then we lift cake and all up and over the PVC pole. We take a moment to line up the spaces. Slide this up. So we would line that up and slide her down the PVC pole, drop it in place. And we would do that for every single tier. So to answer your question, yes, you definitely want support in your styrofoam. If you're using a PVC center, you're going to need a board that's the same size as your cake with that 1-inch cut so that we have room to slide our cake down the PVC. And then I like to glue this to a transport board with just a single dot of glue. That way it stays in place as I'm icing it. I use the nice edge for crisp, clean cakes. And when I'm on site, this lifts up and slides down the pole. Oh, that's going on the bloopers reel later. So there you have it. That's what we do to create our well-supported cakes with MDF or masonite board, floor flanges, adapters, 1/2-inch PVC, and the single plate system. Thanks, and we'll talk to you soon.